All right, you guys good? Clay? All right, 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, John Foss with the CW Twin Cities. Very excited to be talking with Colin Trevorrow, director of the new film, The Book of Henry, which comes out June 16th in theaters. Thanks for being here.
Thank you too, man.
So tell me a little bit about the film.
The Book of Henry is a movie about family and community and what we do to protect each other from some pretty dangerous elements in a very scary world right now. And Naomi Watts is a single mom who has 2 boys, and the older boy is pretty highly intelligent, bit of a genius, recognizes that something terrible is going on next door, the worst thing imaginable, and he takes it upon himself to set that wrong right.
Great, and I saw the film last night. Amazing film, by the way.
Thank you.
And one of the things that stuck out to me is I can honestly say it's probably one of the most original films I've ever seen. And I watched the trailer, and then I watched the film. You don't give much away in the trailer. Was that intentional?
It was definitely intentional. You know, movies can give away so much these days in the marketing that it feels like you show up and you know every single beat. And a lot of times because we, as an audience, understand the structure of movies and we know where that first act's going to break. You already know everything that's going to happen. And so to me, it was a challenge to make something that it's a lower budget film. It's smaller, but it changes constantly, and it's hopefully always surprising you. And it's arguably one of the more unpredictable films I've seen in a while, and that was really the intention.
Yeah, and speaking of lower budget films, obviously you did one of the biggest films in history, and now you're here in Minnesota promoting this film.
Yeah.
And I think you were kind of in charge, and it was your idea to come to Minnesota. Why Minnesota?
Yeah, you make it sound like a demotion, and it's
No,
not. It was
not
my
at all.
choice.
No, sure,
No,
yeah.
I'm kidding. No, it was my choice, and it was my choice to do a small film and something that could speak to people all around the country, not just in New York and LA. I live in Vermont. I lived in Madison, Wisconsin for a while. I feel like it's really important for filmmakers to know people and talk to people who are part of their audience that don't reside specifically, in Bushwick and Silver Lake, where I also have a lot of friends.
Yeah.
And so that was really the mission, was to make something that could appeal to all of us, and then to come out here and talk to people about it, because I believe in this.
Cool. And if I had to kind of summarize your career to people and kind of where it's at right now, and give like a sports analogy,
Okay.
I might summarize it kind of like you've won the Super Bowl, you've won the World Series, and then in your spare time you won a few gold medals in the X Games. Because I mean, you have the biggest film ever, you have one of the biggest films ever coming out, and then you have 2 amazing indie films with Safety Not Guaranteed, and then this, The Book of Henry, and obviously, like I said, Star Wars 9 coming out and Jurassic World. I mean, what's your secret?
I don't know if there is one. I mean, I think being willing to fail and really wanting to show that I have something to say, and I have things that I believe in, and I stand for something, and I want people to know that it's not just making money. Even though I love those films, I love doing Jurassic World. I can't wait to make Star Wars, and these are big, mythic, elemental stories, and I think this is too. And I don't think that a story like that has to be in a big package. It can be in a small package. It can be between 2 houses and 4 characters like this is. My analogy is a little more in the chef world. I love cooking, and I love chefs, and my favorite chefs, when they have a successful restaurant, they shut it down and they just break everything they've been doing, and they rebuild it and try something new, and they hope that you'll like it, but the mission is to constantly challenge themselves and keep themselves scared, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Cool. I have a brother in LA he's very successful in sales. He's looking to get into writing, and also cameraman Clay here. He also mentioned when we were having this interview how excited he was because he would like to replicate your career, which a lot of people would like to do.
Right.
What's your advice to people like my brother looking to get in, Clay trying to kind of replicate your career going forward? What would you say to people like that?
I failed a lot, and I experimented a lot, and I wasn't afraid of it, and I wasn't shy of it. And if you look deep into my IMDb, you'll start seeing things that you've never heard of, and those were all experiments where I was just trying to figure out what kind of storyteller I wanted to be and see if I could break conventions that we have and do something new. And I think challenging yourself to do that will make it possible, if you take on something large like a Jurassic World, to break that a tiny bit, but not too much. You don't want to break it too much.
Gotcha. All right, so kind of to bring it back to the Book of Henry, what inspired you to take on such heavy subject matter?
I feel like we all have a need right now to talk about how scary the world is. And we talk to each other, we talk to our friends and our family, our churches and our communities, because you just kind of need someone to hold on to. And this movie does deal with a lot of challenging subject matter. It does it in a way that I think that children can process, and they're children in the film, and they knew what it was about and what was going on. But I think we live in a very divided country, and there is a moment right now where I think we feel like we can't possibly understand each other. But the reality of it is that there are values that we share, and I think this movie has a lot of those values and shares those values too. So hopefully it's something that we can all talk about, whether you like it, whether you don't like it, you're going to talk about it.
Yeah, that's one thing I've heard you talk about in the past as films go, and I think it's kind of refreshing actually that you don't like to push politics and you like to find common ground on things that both sides, anybody can kind of agree with, and the safety of children is obviously one of them.
Yeah, I think that everybody has a right to be entertained, and it's regardless of their beliefs, and it's my job to do that. And so I don't like cutting myself off from any part of the audience and making anyone feel like I'm not thinking about what's going on in their lives, because especially a film like this, it's crucial that we're able to reach as many people as possible.
And so I was at the film last night, like I said. One of the people that I was sitting with, I was talking to him after the film about the film and the fact that I was going to talk to you today. One of the questions they recommended that I ask, and if this is a spoiler, we can cut it out, but Henry at one point, I mean, he's a great kid. Obviously the audience loves him, but he decides that he wants to murder somebody. Did you feel like that was going to be something that could possibly have the audience turn on him, or what made you take the story in that direction?
Well, the fact that Henry thinks that violence is the only answer, that apathy is the worst thing in the world, and that there's only one course of action after he tries many others, to me is the mindset of a child. And children have this very very simple, clean, black and white version of good and evil that I kind of miss sometimes. I almost wish I could go back to that, because it's simple, and ultimately that's what the movie is about. It's Naomi Watts' character's story, and she begins the movie not having found her compass as a parent yet, and then she loses it even further, and then in the very end she finds it. And when she does find it, it's that she realizes that even though her son was a genius, and even though she was relying on him for so many aspects of parenting, that he still was a child. And it's our job as parents to be the lighthouse, to guide our children toward the shore and make sure they make the right kinds of choices. And ultimately that's really the whole film. I ruined it for everybody. Sorry, it was a spoiler.
That definitely doesn't give it away. I mean, even up to the last few minutes, it takes a totally different shift, and there's multiple shifts throughout the film. So, I mean, that's, like I said, that's one of the things that, as a film watcher, was very refreshing, because most films you kind of know what's going to happen next, and with this one, no clue.
That was one of the things that made it very challenging to make, but also for me, very satisfying to show people, because I think people might assume, based on the films I've made in the past, that you say it's unexpected, a spaceship's going to land, but that's not the kind of unexpected that it is. There are no visual effects in this movie, but it also is, I think, exciting and suspenseful, and it has a lot of the elements that you want in a summer movie. You want to be on the edge of your seat, and we do give you that, but you can have all of that without leaving a 2-block radius in your neighborhood.
Yeah, and speaking of your style and kind of when people think they know what's happening, throwing them a curveball, safety not guaranteed. My brother Kyle that I was talking about, we were discussing the fact that I was going to talk to you today, and he wanted me to ask you, in Safety Not Guaranteed, the ending, what inspired you to take that? I mean, I thought it was awesome, just because I wanted that to happen, but I was like, it's not going to happen in a movie, and it seems like it's going in one direction, but then the ending happens. What inspired you to end it the way you did?
That was a gut feeling. That wasn't the original script, and it's not what we shot.
Oh,
and
really?
I decided that after we'd already been accepted into Sundance with a movie where the time machine didn't work, and he goes to jail, and that whole ending exists.
So that really?
Yeah, and we'd gotten into the festival, and I was in New York City where we were cutting the movie, and I was just walking the streets, and I called all of my friends who I confer with, and my wife, and I just had this gut feeling that that's not what I wanted to have happen. And so I just went into the producers and if I can make this work, cinematically, will you buy me 3 visual effects shots if I can do this? And they said yes, and I'll be forever grateful. Everyone at Big Beach for letting me do that, because it really, I think that moment defined the kind of movie I want to make, the kind of thing I want to do in films, is just, constantly surprise you.
Yeah, and it did, and loved it.
Thank you.
So, nice work. Jurassic World, obviously major success, and you wrote the sequel.
Yeah.
And it was actually, just to kind of highlight the small world of Hollywood and filmmaking, J.A. Bayona, he also, he directed A Monster Calls, which is another film that we highlighted on the CW recently. Great film. Yeah. He's directing it, and you've recently said that you think the sequel is going to be better than the original. And in the original trilogy, the first movie was amazing, and then I've heard you say that there was diminishing returns throughout the trilogy. But now you're saying this sequel is going to be better than the original. What is going to move? What's going to make it better than the original?
I think it's a result of this collaboration, and I don't know. I wrote the movie. I designed sequences that I knew Bayona would direct, and he and I, we're from different countries. We grew up in very different ways, but we share a lot of the same cinematic language and love for children in danger and just like the peril of family life. All of his films, The Impossible is a family in horrible danger, and Monster Calls is a child, dealing with the worst aspects of life. And even Book of Henry and Monster Calls have some similarities to them, and so
I thought the intro with like the pencil,
which was a coincidence. I saw his, and I'm like, oh, okay. but that just it goes to show like how in tune we are,
and they're both focus features.
They're both focus features, and it really it just turned into one of those very special collaborations between 2 filmmakers, and I was actually really excited to be able to just focus on the screenplay, because when you're directing a movie of that size, I was also writing while we were making it, and there's so many different aspects to that process, and I knew what he was about to go through, so I thought the best thing I could do would be to be there to support him every day, to make sure the script was always on point, and to work on it and hone it and build something that is, I think, much more complex, much richer, much deeper, and also scarier and more suspenseful. We're not necessarily just going to go bigger, and I don't think that's the answer.
Yeah, that seems like the generic, expected route.
There are people will get to have it both ways, because there is a massive sequence in the middle of the movie that is just insane. That and I've seen all of the footage. I've been there every day as he's been doing it. It's just one of the most exciting sequences I've ever seen. But then it gets very tight and compact and constricted, and it's kind of a monster in a box kind of a movie. Cool. And I think people are going to really love it.
Great. And we can't let you go without asking at least one Star Wars question.
I know.
So, okay, and I know you've talked about this a lot recently, but unfortunately Carrie Fisher passed away last year. Yeah. And I know that she was going to be, her character, Princess Leia, was going to be a big focus of Star Wars 9. Yeah. You as the writer, how much of the film did you have written when she unfortunately passed away, and how did that change your, how have you changed the direction of the film because of that?
Well, can't go into too many specifics, but she was really where I began when I started thinking about what this story was going to be. It was about her in a lot of ways. Obviously, Rey is the hero, and that's the character who we're tracking through these films, but each one of them has had a character from the earlier trilogy who's really been the keystone of the film, and she was going to be. So it was very tragic and very sad for all of us, beyond just the fact that we lost somebody that we all love. And it's my responsibility now to find a way to honor her and keep her soul and her presence in the film without Carrie, which is very sad.
Will the 9th episode kind of wrap up that trilogy, or will it lead us into?
Yes, the 9th episode will wrap up that trilogy.
All right, I won't try too hard to get spoilers.
Don't stress me out, man.
All right. Well, Colin Trevorrow, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. And The Book of Henry, it's going to be in theaters June 16th. Check it out.